Hello, everyone. I hope you guys are having a great day. So, as you can see in the title, I got a draw against a Grandmaster. And this is the best and probably the shortest draw I've ever had so far. And I don't know how it happened, but it happened. So, since it will be sort of a shorter video, I will show you guys what I would do if I would keep playing because the game was featuring my main opening, the Catalan. Now, this happened after I went undefeated 3-0, going into the last round of a tournament in Marshall Chess Club. Now, so the GM started with knight to f3, very starting with it ready, being flexible of any response, and I just go for d5. Uh, Ready to just play any sort of d4 opening that he will throw at me. And here he went d4, which is understandable. I went c6, faking the semi-Slav, faking the Slav defense. Basically, if he went c4, I would have went e6 right away. So that would probably reveal a little bit more that I'm trying to play Queen's Gambit Decline or a semi-Slav right away. But here, since he played d4, I can play c6 and fake that. Oh, I could play a Slav defense. But after c4, I just went e6. And here, I go for the accelerated semi-Slav, and because I didn't want to face the Catalan. And I thought he was going to play a regular semi-Slav with e3, which protects a pawn, right? Or knight c3, but knight c3, I have the line where I take the pawn on c4, and it's very interesting. But he thought for 3 minutes, and he still went for g3, which surprised me a ton, right? Now my main opening is the Catalan, so of course I know how this will work. Now this move order from black here, specifically in the semi-stop, can counter the Catalan pretty well because I can actually keep the extra pawn if I capture on c4, creating imbalances in the position. So I play d takes c4 pretty much right away. I don't really think about it because I had a game as white playing the Catalan against this move order, and I lost because I didn't know the best moves, which I needed to know if I want to have compensation for the pawn. But here, it becomes very hard for white to keep the pawn because black saves a tempo by not playing knight f6. So black has enough time to set up the queen side to protect the pawn, and you'll see in a second what I mean. So after bishop g2 here, I went b5, and here he just castle. The reason he can't go knight e5 here is because I have bishop b7, and now again because I didn't play knight f6, so I have enough time to play b5 and bishop b7. So he would have to castle, and then I play a6, and then I have a superior. I just have superiority in the queen side. Now white is still better here, slightly, right? But the compensation is very unclear at this point because uh, I pretty much will have an extra pawn for a very long time, and it's gonna be very hard for white to deal with. Like I was ready to play a GM up a pawn, and then if something happens, I can give the pawn back. So, but to go back to the previous point I was saying, right over here, if instead of d takes c4, I play knight to f6, then after bishop g2, I can no longer take the pawn because it's not free. If I take the knight e5, I can no longer go b5 because now I lose the pawn on c6. And this is very bad for black. So, yeah, so here he just castle, and then I went bishop b7. So you want a4, I just go a6. There's nothing wrong with that. So that if he takes, I can take back with the a pawn, or the c pawn or the a pawn, depending on what my plan is. And he could have tried to play on, right, with maybe knight e5 and some of that stuff, but he played knight c3 and offered me a draw. Right? It's crazy, right? It's a completely normal theoretical position. And when I heard it, I was like, "What? is he serious? Like I was so shocked that at that moment I had a mental warfare. Now I know that he's an old GM, right? And his rating is not at the GM strength anymore. So he definitely isn't as good as a real GM. However, he still has the experience and the strength is still there. He just, I mean, he already got the title. He got the GM title since 1988. I wasn't even born back then. So, and he also has the white pieces, so he can just beat me. I was ready to get crushed and have an actual game to see the difference between me and a GM, right? And also kind of show you guys what happened. But like I wasn't sure if I still wanted to play. Now, I was crawling like on the board for 5 minutes because I didn't know what to do. I kept thinking back and forth whether I want to play this position. Um, the reason I wanted to play on is because again I have the exact position around a year ago where I lost against an 1800. And fun fact, knight c3 is actually the only inaccuracy in the game. Like for this, like knight c3 is actually an inaccuracy because before this, white needs to address the problem of the pawn chain here by going b3. But he didn't do that, so he played knight c3, and now the problem is because there's a knight on c3. If he goes b3, a lot of crazy things can happen, and I will definitely go over that in a second. Um, but yeah, I actually thought for like some time because I thought that I might actually win the game. Um, but I'm playing a GM, so again, the chance I get outplay is super super high. Like when because I did analyze the game that I lost, and I definitely pushed a little too hard. So if he play patiently, right, and then he just play around, just improve position slowly and then strike, I probably won't be able to defend well. Um, and because he's 2350 like USCF, a draw would actually get me more points than all the wins that I had in the previous rounds. So after 5 minutes considering, I accepted a draw, and I ended up tied first with three other people, including the GM, right? And the good thing is that because we drew this game really early on, like we just the first one that go home because it's the last round. So I guess it was a good decision after all, right? I do have to say though that the kids in Marshall Chess Club are very strong, so I got very good practices of my game. Now, go back to the game since it was so short, right? What I would like to do is talk a little bit more about this line because I really think that this line is super interesting and it's risky for both sides. Um, so again, I mentioned before that the correct move here is b3, and after c3 cheese takes because it's forced, right? I can't just like not take. Queen takes b3. Now my queen side looks my bishop looks a little bit awkward, and yeah, I mean, but which it should is what happened when I get an extra pawn. This is the compensation that white has. I have a pretty bad queen side. Not my pawns, it's just my pieces in general. It's gonna be pretty hard to develop. And again, the problem with knight c3 here is, say after knight f6, it's no longer b3 because after b3 I can get b4 in, and again I have the b4 is protected, so now I get b4 and c3, and the position just goes really bad for white, and I will have a very comfortable position with a pass pawn on c3. You know what I mean? So, but what I will play again, just knight f6 and probably knight e5 will be play. This is probably gonna be the move likely because if I'm not careful, I will have to give the pawn back. Now, there's nothing wrong with me giving the pawn back, but getting an absolute equal position against a GM, I was feeling good at the moment, but I wasn't sure, if I could actually hold. So I wanted to keep the extra pawn for as long as possible because I can keep it. Now, if it was like a gambit where I will have to give it back, then yes, I will give it back because it's a GM. I don't want to deal with the development compensation. So here I analyze, and there are a few moves. Right there now, the best move here is Queen C8, which looks very awkward. But I'll tell you what happens. Right. So if I go Bishop E7 here, just developing normally, then he can gain back the pawn. And with A takes B5, pawn takes, and after the rook trades, he can actually take on B5. And now I have to give the pawn back, right? Because I just lost a pawn. So pawn takes, bishop takes, and castle. And then he just moved the bishop back to G2. And this is equal. This equal. I have some good pawns on the queen side, but it's very unclear what I can actually do. And white has a very nice center plus a queen side, so I don't know what's gonna happen here. And again, as I said, there are lines where I can keep the pawn, right? So going back, queen c8 is one line, but there's also another line with queen to b6. But now the problem is after b3 here, there are some interesting things because first of all, b4 here doesn't work because again the queen is on b6, so like my pawn is hanging because of knight, yeah. So I have to take the pawn. But now if white is able to do this, now the problem is like, why do I have two pieces getting pinned on this file for no reason, right? So I don't want to do that. And then again, another problem is that this doesn't work. Yeah, I think this doesn't work because white gets development and this is a tempo, so I don't want to allow that. It's still fine for black, but it gets really tricky, and I don't want to do. And I decided that queen c8 is probably the best move. And here again, there's none of this now because I can actually take with the c pawn. And guess what? I just have a pawn chain. So what probably would happen is gotta be e4, taking up the center. It's probably what I would do as well. And after this, I think that I have pretty good chances, right? Because even though white gets compensation with the center, the pawn is now securely protected. I have quite a bad queen side that it's gonna take me a while to unravel my queen and my bishop. But once I do, my position will be very, very, very much better. So, like, say I just go knight bd7, and if f4 is play here, f4 might be play here, right? Just going for, taking up the center and protecting the knight on e5. So, and then I probably will have to try to defend this. This is what probably would happen if I play on. So, but yeah, I think that this is just like crazy things. The crazy things happen in the Catalan, especially when you actually take the pawn on c4 and try to do things around it. So, I think overall, I'm still happy that I got a draw against a GM, right? It's pretty hilarious, but it's also very nice that I got some free points, and I just got first place. So I hopefully if I play him next time, right? Which he's actually a regular GM at Marshall, so hopefully I can get to play him like hopefully again in the future, and then if he offers me a draw again by any chance, right? I will just not accept the draw and keep playing, because again the point of I think at this point, what I'm trying to do is trying to improve my gameplay, and I can only do that by playing strong players. And playing, an experienced GM is nothing better. So I might as well just do that. So, thank you so much for watching. I know that this, it's a little bit shorter, but I just want to share this moment with you guys that it's the first GM that I drew. This is actually not the first GM that I play. The first GM that I play is Hans Niemann, actually, the Super GM. However, I don't have my game against Hans Niemann, so I can't really show you guys. Uh, but yeah, hopefully more things will happen to in the future, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.